I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, a rocket fired from Gaza hits a house in southern Israel. Police prevent a suicide bombing at the last minute, and we'll reveal why playing video games may come in handy if you join the Israeli army. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Fresh rocket attacks from Gaza have just been launched into Israeli territory. 2 rockets exploded inside the Strip, 1 exploded in an open field, and 1 actually struck a house in an Israeli community in the northern Negev. Luckily, no injuries have been reported. The IDF has launched an immediate counterstrike to these attacks, hitting 6 Hamas military targets inside the Strip. The army has identified these facilities as a training camp and buildings that support Hamas's terror infrastructure. This latest volley of rockets from Gaza is only the latest attack ever since President Trump's now infamous decision to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. However, this is the first real rocket to actually hit an Israeli structure. In pictures posted to social media, you can see the damage caused to the outside wall of the house. All in all, this is already shaping up to be the biggest consistent period of rocket fire from the Strip since the 2014 war between Israel and Hamas. Well, less than 48 hours after the issue was officially submitted to the floor, the United Nations Security Council is now set to vote on a new resolution, one which would officially and legally reject the declaration made by President Trump, declaring Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The draft of the resolution does not specifically mention Trump or even the United States, but what it does do is make null and void any decision and actions which purport to have altered the character, status, or demographic composition of the holy city of Jerusalem. If passed, it would require the United States to rescind its statement on Jerusalem and forbid any nations from setting up diplomatic missions or embassies in Jerusalem, something that President Trump has also promised to do. Well, though the initiative has strong support of the UN, it's unlikely that a vote will actually come to pass. The U.S. is expected to use its veto power to cancel it. And this, however, wouldn't end the discussion, but merely send it to the General Assembly for further discussion. With worldwide protests still raging over this sensitive issue and Vice President Pence just days away from his visit to the region, this debate is likely to continue for quite some time. Well, a Palestinian man has just been arrested entering an IDF courthouse in the West Bank with a bomb strapped to his body. Now, police immediately identified and arrested the suspect. Upon their search, they discovered a knife in his pocket as well as an additional pipe bomb. Demolition experts were called to the scene to safely disarm the explosives from the suspect's body. Police say the suspect intended to commit a suicide bombing terror attack inside the courthouse, similar to an attempted bombing of the same courthouse back in October. The suspect is now believed to be involved in a pipe bomb making ring in the Jenin refugee camp. He was first seen entering the courthouse wearing a suspiciously heavy coat. Guards on the scene acted quickly, and when they asked him to lift his shirt, saw a bomb strapped to his body. Their quick response likely saved countless lives. The Israeli cabinet has just approved a massive new project to help integrate the country's ultra-orthodox population into Israeli society. Now, the initiative allocates at least 7% of all jobs in the public sector and reserves them specifically for the ultra-orthodox. ILTV's Aaron Porras joins us with the scoop. So, Aaron, what does 7% of the public sector offer?
So I'll give a little bit more specific details in my report, but it actually offers quite a bit. The Haredi and ultra-Orthodox communities, for a long time and for various complicated reasons, remain one of the most impoverished communities in the country. In fact, even here in ILTV, we've reported just recently that about 15% of the impoverished population here in Israel is from the Haredi and the ultra-Orthodox community, and that's despite getting subsidies and all sorts of financial benefits through the state. So, adding 7% of the economy, of the job sector, just in the public sector, to the Haredi and Orthodox community will put more money in their pockets, which will be a benefit both to them and actually ultimately to the taxpayer.
Right, but the question is whether or not this is something that is desired by the ultra-Orthodox community as well. But let's see the rest of your report to hear some more details about that.
The Haredi community receives a government stipend that allows them to pursue their devotion to Torah, but despite this support, the ultra-Orthodox is one of the poorest communities in Israel. Contributing to this is that this year, the ultra-Orthodox community accounted for only 7% of Israel's entire workforce. But this new initiative, which is being hailed by the ultra-Orthodox parties, will offer 130 new jobs to the Orthodox every year. Furthermore, by working in the public sector, this will help integrate Haredim into the rest of Israeli society, which sometimes sees the ultra-Orthodox as cut off. Either way, it's a win-win for the country.
4 million people worldwide face fluid overload, a condition that causes patients to become swollen with fluid in various parts of their bodies. Well, joining us now is Nitai Hanani, the co-founder and CEO of Paragate, a company that has a revolutionary new treatment for this condition. Thanks for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
So first, tell us a little bit more about this condition. Why did you choose to focus on it, and how many people are affected?
Well, about 26 million patients suffer from heart failure worldwide. 1/3 of the sufferers do not respond to oral medications, and regardless of the reason that causing the heart failure, these patients accumulate fluids.
Right.
And they have the only remedy in the hospital, where they have acute and aggressive treatments that carry complications, costs, but most importantly, they don't prevent the recurrence of the congestion.
Right, which is a major issue. So you decided to focus on this issue because it's so common. What is the treatment that you came up with?
The acute and aggressive treatments are limited. We have developed an implantable device that can work 24/7, be there all day long, and slowly clearing the fluids from the body, slowly without the complications related to the aggressive treatments, thus keeping patient balanced at home.
That's amazing. Now, is this treatment available yet, or is it in the process of being created? Where is that right now?
Together with the help of our investors, NGT3 Venture Capital, we were able in the last 2 years to demonstrate tremendous results on the preclinical setting. We are now starting the clinical trials, and if everything goes correctly, will be out in the market by 2020.
That's a big deal. And I mean, clearly this is a issue that many people face, and it's not specific to one part of the body, right? There are a lot of different conditions within this condition.
Yeah, it is relevant to heart failure, to chronic kidney disease, and some other pathologies. But we are focused on the heart failure.
On the heart failure.
But they are suffering and don't have any other solution currently.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this. Good luck. I know that there are a lot of people who are going to want this treatment in 2020, so everybody keep your eyes open.
Thank you very much.
All right. Earlier this month, a group of women won a massive 5-year-long lawsuit in the city of Beit Shemesh. Their victory meant the end of ultra-orthodox signs posted all over the city, which demanded women to not only dress modestly, but also not to walk on certain parts of the streets. Now, although those signs have started to come down, the women are now facing new harassment and even death curses. This sort of tension in the ultra-Orthodox world is unfortunately nothing new. That's because the community holds fiercely strict religious views, which has often clashed sometimes violently with the modern world. This issue of modesty first made headlines when a group of ultra-Orthodox actually spat at an 8-year-old girl, who they claimed was dressed immodestly. That's where the so-called modesty signs around the city came into play. But 5 women took a stand against these signs, which the court finally upheld as gender discrimination earlier this year. Unfortunately, they now find themselves the target of new harassment after their personal information was distributed in flyers around the city. They're all receiving threatening phone calls, and one woman even says someone placed a pulsa dinora on her, also known as a Jewish death curse. The same one that the right-wing extremists placed on Yitzhak Rabin mere weeks before his murder. Despite the harassment, these women are standing firm for their rights. When people call and make threats, they don't yell back. They just invite them to coffee to talk over their differences. Now, if these aren't real-life Wonder Women, then I don't know what are. An Iranian man was sentenced to death earlier this year after he was suspected of leaking intel to Israel's Mossad spy agency that resulted in the death of 2 Iranian nuclear scientists. That man has just confessed to spying for a foreign country on Iranian state television, though he did not specifically name Israel in his confession. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith has the details on this story.
Thank you, Natasha. And yes, as you said, this man, Ahmad Reza Jalali, was arrested last year in Iran for suspected espionage. Now, human rights groups have been particularly interested in this case because Iran has repeatedly denied Jalali any kind of due process of law. They even blocked his appeal after giving the death sentence. Jalali pleaded at the time that he was actually arrested as a punishment for refusing to spy for Iran while he lived in Europe. That's certainly not the story he's telling now, confessing on TV that he indeed did supply intel to a foreign government related directly to these dead nuclear scientists.
Well, under normal circumstances, I think we'd take a confession like this at face value,
Sure.
but considering Iran's been accused of forcing confessions or getting evidence under duress, should we accept Jalili's confession?
Well, I think it's justified to have some skepticism here, and that's actually something Jalali's lawyers have argued in trial as well. And I also want to add that Jalali's wife has defended her husband in spite of this confession, saying his interrogators actually forced him to read a pre-written statement on camera. But then again, the specificity of certain details may or may not be very telling, as you'll see right now in my report.
Ahmad Reza Jalali was jailed last year in Iran on espionage charges, accused of leaking intelligence to Israel on the whereabouts of top Iranian scientists. Intel that Iran's Supreme Court believes resulted in the deaths of at least 2 Iranian nuclear scientists by a top-secret Israeli assassination mission. Israel has been working for years to derail or at least delay Iran's attempt to acquire nuclear weapons and often uses covert ops to work beneath the surface. Jalali's televised confession confirms many suspicions of such tactics. According to his story, a man approached Jalali while he was a student in Europe with a job offer. This relationship ultimately led to his recruitment into the foreign country's intelligence service, which promised him citizenship in exchange for intel.
مطرح کردن گفتن که ما به ازای اینکه شما وقت میذارید و میخواید با ما صحبت بکنید در هر ملاقات میتونیم یه حق الجلسه هم به شما بدین. دوم اینکه ما طی یک پروسه زمانی به شما وعده میدیم که شهروندی یکی از کشورهای اروپای غربی رو برای شما فراهم بکنیم.
Human rights groups have been picketing for Jalali's release ever since his arrest and say Iran's courts didn't even let them file their defense before sentencing him to death. Iran has arrested, sentenced, and executed 3 other nationals on similar espionage charges, which, coupled with this confession, doesn't bode well for Jalali's case.
Tourism is booming in Israel, and in November, Israel's 3 millionth tourist landed in the Holy Land. But high hotel prices may be impacting tourism growth in the wrong way. And joining us is Avidor, the CEO of the Prima Hotels chain in Israel. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, so tourism has increased majorly this year, as I just said, but what can we expect for 2018?
I think if it will be like it was in 2017 and even more, we will be very happy with it. I think that the tourism this year was great. We expect to finish the year with more than 3,500,000.
Do you know why there was such an increase in tourism this year specifically?
Yes, mainly because tourism is booming all over the world, and I think that in Israel also we have a trend that people now, when the security is more in hand. In 2017, we could see that many markets came and increased their volume to Israel, mainly the US and Chinese market.
Right, there have been a lot more Chinese tourists, actually, more specifically. So what does your hotel chain offer?
Our chain is really a mid-range, mid-size hotel chain that especially goes with a mid-size hotels all over Israel, from Eilat in the south to Tiberias in the north. We have 14 hotels and more than 1,600 rooms. The uniqueness of our chain is that we provide experiences by concepts.
Interesting.
Yes, and we try to provide it from the location the hotel are in, and to give it in 360 degrees in service, in design, and trying to be a quality with a value for money.
Well, with 14 different hotels, I mean, you're covering a lot of locations in a small country, right? So what about the prices? You know, like I said before, the high hotel prices in Israel have led to a lot of people choosing Airbnb over the typical hotel route. Where do you guys range?
We are in the mid-range. We give a value for money for our clients, I think so, and it is mainly because we usually people looks in the prices of the 5 stars and the luxury hotels. I think there is more variety, and I think that the prices in Israel, if you look on all the range, is reasonable. The costs are high in Israel. We know that.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you have to deal with kosher licenses. There are specific things that make the prices here a little higher, but still come to Israel. It's a beautiful country, and there's a lot of amazing sights to see, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Avi.
Thank you.
Well, the Israeli army is one of the most cutting-edge fighting forces in the world, and much of the IDF's tech comes homegrown from the country's military developers. But it turns out the army is looking for ideas wherever they can be found, which means even in the private sector, where one civilian's virtual reality toy could help win tomorrow's war. The IDF already adapts all kinds of civilian products, from artificial intelligence tools to VR goggles to telecommunications toys for military use. In fact, one of the Army's biggest upgrades earlier this year was a military smartphone developed with Motorola that is specially designed for war zones. Another nod on civilian cybersecurity and AI has led to the Army's Z-Tube, a massive interface of live-streamed videos that track movement along enemy borders in real time. The IDF has even installed facial recognition tech programs at border checkpoints, similar to the system you find on the latest batch of iPhones. But what's the next big breakthrough? Well, according to the Army's chief programmer's desk, it'll be virtual reality goggles designed to train soldiers remotely with augmented reality. It looks like maybe all that time playing video games might actually pay off in the battlefield. Well, the largest business news site on the web has just put together its list of the top 50 startups that are expected to dominate the tech world next year. And there are no surprises here, folks. 4 Israeli firms have cracked the list from Business Insider. Business Insider's annual list called 50 Startups That Will Boom in 2018 is one of the most prestigious nods in the tech industry. These 4 Israeli startups represent some of the coolest, craziest breakthroughs in the market. There's Zebra Medical Vision, which uses artificial intelligence to read medical scans and helps doctors actually predict health problems. Cryon Systems is another company pioneering AI, but this one's developing automated robots to help companies like HP and AT&T become automated. Don't worry, their robots seem totally friendly. This next one has maybe the coolest name of them all, Secret Double Octopus, which is developing authentication tech that doesn't need a password or a key. But this final startup might take the cake. They are imaging, which makes a technology that can actually see through objects. Wow, no wonder these companies are all expected to go boom next year. Italy's Turin Film Festival has just come to an end, and it looks like an Israeli film has snagged some of its biggest awards, including Best Film, Best Actor, and Best Actress. That's a big feat, especially since the festival is the second largest in Italy and follows just behind the Venice Film Festival. Well, joining us now is the screenwriter and lead actor of the masterpiece, Don't Forget Me, Nitai Gvirtz. Thank you so much for coming in. We have a star in the studio.
Thank you for having me, not us.
Well, I mean, there are a lot of big stars in the film as well. You also won Best Actress, correct?
Yeah, we won Best Actress.
So tell us first what the film is about.
Well, it's mostly about an anorexic girl meeting a mentally ill guy. It's a love story. It's kind of a dark comedy. I don't know.
A dark comedy of sorts.
Yeah.
And you wrote this. How did you come up with this idea?
Well, it all started in a workshop with director Ram Nahari, and me and Moon, the actress, we went study acting there, and I brought a character based on my friend, and she brought a character based on her experiences, and we kind of got it together, and then I sat down giving in the hours, and
you wrote this, and this was...
And together with them.
Okay, so you wrote it together. Yeah. Very interesting. So, I mean, obviously I haven't seen the film yet. I have to go see it myself. But why do you think the film snagged so many awards?
It's different, I think. I think it's different. It's hard to answer. I mean, this kind of a question, but I'm sure it's a different film, and I think it touched people. I think people were very like...
Well, I mean, you were obviously dealing with some very taboo issues, anorexia, mental illness.
Yeah, but it's also a bit funny. Like, it's not, we're not afraid of like approaching it in just like your way of, if it's funny, then it's funny, and it's okay.
Yeah, and it's okay to take these issues and put a comedic twist on them. Yeah,
exactly.
Very cool. Well, what is next? Do you have another film coming down the lines? I mean, after all this success, you're probably busy coming up with a new idea.
Yeah, working on stuff, for sure.
Any clues? Any?
Nah. I won't give it.
We're not allowed to find out.
I'm writing stuff, even in English, so hopefully I'll be here again and speak about that.
Well, for those of our viewers who are interested in seeing this film of yours, don't forget me, where can they do that?
Well, it's not out in Israel. It will be in festivals, I hope, now, all over the world. And hopefully in the US also. Okay,
and they can see a trailer online as well right now?
Okay. Don't forget me, Al Tishkechi Oti in Hebrew.
Yeah, that's where to go. Yeah. All right, guys, well, I want to see this myself. This is a really, really big kavod, really big deal for you. Congratulations to your entire team. And I think we're all waiting for your next film.
Thanks so much.
All right, well, speaking of films, Israel might be on track for its 11th Oscar nomination in the Best Foreign Film category. This year's entry, Foxtrot, has just made the Academy's shortlist, which means it now competes against 8 other films to land a nomination at this year's Oscars. Israel has never won an Academy Award for foreign film, despite being nominated 10 times in the past. But Foxtrot has been picking up steam and gunning for that Oscar ever since it won silver at the Venice Film Festival earlier this year. The film tells the story of a grieving family who learns their son's been killed while serving in the Israeli army, and has ignited fierce controversy for its portrayal of the IDF. But who knows, maybe that buzz has catapulted the film's success. Earlier this month, Foxtrot was named the Best Foreign Film of the Year by the National Board of Review. Now, Israel's other Oscar hopeful of the year, Gal Gadot, shattered the glass ceiling in box office records with this year's blockbuster Wonder Woman, but neither Gadot nor the film have gotten as much love from the Critics' Awards as we would have liked. The Screen Actors Guild has just nominated the film's stunt team for Outstanding Action Performance by a Stunt Ensemble, so hopefully that can translate into Oscar buzz before the final nominations next month. Have you guys ever heard of the show Seinfeld or the celebrity comedian, actor, and writer Jerry Seinfeld? Well, it turns out Jerry first got into the field of comedy on his trip to the Holy Land, and ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has the details.
And Natasha, well, like you said, Jerry Seinfeld is a household name across dozens of countries, and now he's actually giving credit to his comedy career to his first trip to the Holy Land. In an interview with Channel 2 News, Seinfeld told Donna Weiss that his first thoughts of becoming a comedian were when he was 15 years old in Israel. After he explained to Weiss that this was not all a ploy to get Israelis to come to his show, Seinfeld said, quote, my comedy career honestly really began at Kibbutz Sa'ar.
Honestly, I was planning on going to a show either way, but to hear him credit the kibbutz makes it even more interesting. So tell us more about his upcoming show and plans here in the Holy Land.
Well, this is clearly not Seinfeld's first visit to the Holy Land, but it is for his family. Seinfeld and his whole family plan on making a trip out of his upcoming Israeli comedy show. He's set to perform 2 shows here in Tel Aviv on December 30th. And as for his family, he plans on taking them all over, Masada, the Dead Sea, Jerusalem. And as for the topic of politics, Seinfeld says he stays updated on news when it comes to Israel, but when it comes to politics, he says he tends to stay away from talking about that topic.
Well, I guess that's understandable. He sticks to the topics that make people laugh, and in Israel, politics does not always do that, unfortunately. All right, well, I know Israel cannot wait to have him again. Thanks for joining us, Emmanuel.
Thank you. Thanks.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day, no matter how great you may think you are, always remember a lot was accomplished before you were born. So on that note, today's word is tsanua, which means modest in Hebrew. Being tsanua is an admirable quality, but unfortunately not a lot of people possess it. That's too bad, because according to Confucius, a superior being is tsanua in his speech, but exceeds in his actions. I think that's a good saying to try to live up to. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight and tomorrow should both be partly cloudy with very little change in temperatures. The low tonight will be about 57 or 14 degrees Celsius, and you can expect the high tomorrow to be around 76 or 24 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.52 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.